When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject, still hungry. User, 19DustyRusty. Posted, July 23, 1997.
I was somewhere between Amarillo and Tulsa, just outside of Enid, when I first caught the smell. The highway was empty that night. No taillights, no truck stops, not even the glow of a farmhouse out in the fields. Just the endless dark and that low hum you get when your tires hit rough concrete. I'd been driving for hours, my eyelids heavy, the radio cutting in and out of static, when it hit me. Smoke. Not the acrid kind from brush fires or exhaust, but thick, sweet barbecue smoke. It was the kind that gets in your clothes and makes your mouth water, heavy with pepper and fat and hickory. I thought maybe I'd passed a restaurant or some guy barbecuing in his backyard, but there was nothing out there but black fields and open sky. The smell didn't fade. If anything, it got stronger the farther I drove. It was damn near intoxicating. Every breath filled my head until I couldn't think of anything else. When I finally saw that line of smoke trailing above the trees on the right side of the highway, I told myself I'd just swing by for a minute, grab a plate, and get back on the road. A quick pit stop. That's what I told myself. The gravel road wasn't marked. Just a narrow cut that turned off the highway and disappeared into the dark. The smoke thickened the deeper I went, and by the time I hit the clearing, I could smell charred meat so rich it made my stomach cramp. The place sat in a little patch of dirt surrounded by scrub pine, an old cinder block building with a rusted tin roof and a single light burning above the door. A hand-painted sign leaned crookedly in the dirt. The meat pit. No menu, no hours, no phone number. Just those 3 words. I parked beside a faded El Camino that looked like it ain't moved in years. The door hung open on a busted spring, and somewhere inside, an old Merle Haggard song played through a cheap transistor radio. I stepped through the doorway and into a wave of smoke and heat that nearly took my breath away. The air was thick enough to taste. There was no counter, no tables, just a steel prep bench and a single man behind it. He was tall, narrow, face sallow, eyes yellow at the edges like an old dog's. His apron was stained dark. He didn't speak, didn't even smile, just stared at me for a long minute before turning the tray on the counter. It was piled high with sliced brisket, steaming and glistening with fat. No sides, no sauce, no bread, just meat. "How much?" I asked. He blinked once. "Whatever you think it's worth." I laid down a 20. He nodded, slid the tray toward me, and went back to his work. I ate standing up. tearing into it with my hands because there were no forks, no napkins, nothing. It was the best thing I'd ever tasted. Sweet smoke, tender as velvet, with this faint tang of metal that shouldn't have worked, but did. I could feel the grease coating my lips, soaking through my skin. I finished the whole tray before I even realized I was sweating. I'd eaten so fast, I could barely breathe, but it felt good. Too good. When I looked up to thank the man, he was gone. The radio was silent. The heat had died down. It was just me and that empty counter. I drove another 30 miles before I started shaking. My hands felt weak. My tongue kept running over my teeth like it was searching for something more. My stomach was full, but it growled anyway. By the time I hit the next exit, I was already turning back. The shack looked different when I came up on it again. The same building, same yellow bug light, but the El Camino was gone, replaced by a pickup. Smoke poured heavier from the pit out back, and when I went inside, the same man stood behind the counter, waiting like he'd been expecting me. "You back already?" he said. I nodded, embarrassed at myself. He smiled a little this time and pushed another tray forward. I didn't pay him. I just ate. I told myself I was fine, but that night I couldn't sleep. I dreamt of fire and teeth, of something burning behind my eyes. I woke up in my cab, drenched in sweat, with foil-wrapped meat sitting on the passenger seat. I didn't remember buying it. Over the next few days, it got worse. My dispatcher was calling, wondering why I hadn't checked in. I didn't answer. I drove circles through northern Oklahoma, back and forth across the same stretches of road, always finding my way to that shack. Sometimes there were people there. Sometimes there weren't, but the man behind the counter was always waiting. My teeth started to ache, deep in the roots. My sense of smell sharpened. I could catch a whiff of roadkill a mile before I passed it. The scent didn't make me sick. It made my stomach twist with hunger. My reflection changed, too. My eyes had gone yellow like his. I could barely stand to look at myself. I tried quitting, swore it off, took a haul all the way to Memphis just to get away, but the smell followed me, faint and teasing, like something stuck in my clothes. I holed up in a motel and threw up red grease until I passed out. When I came to, there was a knock on the door. No one was there, though. Just a paper bag sitting outside with a note inside. In block letters written in grease pencil, it said, "Still hungry?" Inside the bag was a single slice of brisket. I don't remember eating it, but I woke up with the taste in my mouth and blood under my nails. When I finally went back, the meat pit was locked up tight. A chain hung across the door and a sign said private event, but I heard people inside, muffled voices, laughter, the sound of metal scraping, and beneath it all, the noise again, chewing. I went around back. The smoker was bigger than I remembered, black and rusted, with a plume of greasy smoke pouring from the vents. The air was thick and wet, the smell so strong it made my eyes water. I reached for the latch. It wasn't locked. I lifted the lid, and inside were ribs. Huge, pale things, the length of a man's arm, and wedged between them was a blackened hand. Fingers curled, the gold band on one finger half melted from the heat. I staggered back and the door opened behind me. "You shouldn't see that," said the man. His voice was calm, almost gentle. Behind him, through the smoke, I saw the others. Faces I recognized. Truckers, locals, travelers, some of them chewing, some staring at me with slick, red mouths. "What is this place?" I whispered. He smiled, and his teeth gleamed sharp in the glow of the pit. "Price of real flavor," he said. I ran. I don't remember the drive, just the roar of the engine, the taste of blood in my mouth, and the smell of smoke still clinging to my hands. I drove until I saw city lights again, pulled into a motel, and locked the door. I tried calling the cops, the health department, the number for Garfield County Sheriff's Office. None of them could find a record of the place. No property on that road, no building permits, GPS logs gone, and when I went back the next morning, all I found was an empty clearing and a few scorched bricks half buried in the dirt. But I know what I saw, I know what I ate, and I can't stop tasting it. The smell follows me everywhere, every gas station, every roadside diner, every stretch of asphalt. I wake up at night with my jaw locked, chewing nothing but air, and I swear I can still hear the whisper of that man's voice in my ear. "Still hungry?" The answer is yes. God help me. Yes.
Subject: The Face in the Haze. User: Fuzzer9. Posted April 29, 1997.
My life has never been what you'd call normal. I've seen things like ghosts since I was little, but growing up in Pocatello, which was and still is a very Christian place, the first time I brought it up, my mom started shouting about the devil. For what it's worth, I believe in God and His Son Jesus Christ, our Savior, but that doesn't mean I think everything else is evil. But I didn't come here to talk about my religious philosophy. No, I wanted to share a story that happened when I was 15 years old and on a band trip to Salt Lake City. It wasn't the craziest thing that's happened to me, but it was the first time it had happened away from home. This all took place in October of 1976 when I was a flute player in the Pauki High Marching Band, the Indian band we called it then. I haven't been back to Idaho in years, but I think they might still call it that, even though they shouldn't. Anyways, our band was one of 12 invited to participate in the University Band Day competition, sponsored by the University of Utah just outside Salt Lake City. SLC is a 2.5-hour drive from Pocatello, so the plan was to make it a day trip with our sponsor, Mr. Webster, driving the bus. In order to be at Rice Stadium before things kicked off at 9 a.m., we had to be at Pauki for 6, which was a drag. We were practically comatose on the way down, but that all changed as soon as we saw the stadium. I'll spare you the details, but we kicked ass and managed to come in 4th, which wasn't bad when you consider 11 other bands were competing. We even got to play during the Utes game that night, all 1,600 of us, and it was just about the loudest thing I have ever heard. As I mentioned, it was supposed to be a day trip, but after we'd all piled back into the bus to head home, completely exhausted, Mr. Webster couldn't get the engine to turn over. The bus would briefly fire, cough a couple times, then shut down. It was 10 o'clock by this point, and there weren't going to be any mechanics available until morning, so Mr. Webster worked out a solution with someone from the university. Not far from the stadium, there was apparently a former motel which had been converted into off-campus housing for visiting sports teams and officials. The university would put us up there for a night. The dorm wasn't anything special, but it was better than sleeping on the bus. Mr. Webster separated us by gender, putting the girls upstairs and the boys downstairs. There were 4 of us to each room and stacked bunks on either side, with a table and chairs in the middle. I didn't love having to share a room, but at least we had a bathroom of our own. There was a long rectangular window that looked out into the motel's rear courtyard, but by the time we got there, it was so dark out you couldn't see anything. As I said before, I'd never had a supernatural experience outside of our house, so I just assumed that was always going to be the case. I never gave a second thought to whether or not there was anything spiritually off about the dorm. There wasn't even time, really, because as soon as my head hit the pillow, I was out. I remember dreaming about being lost in the Arctic. The sky was pitch black, pinpricked by stars, and I was trudging through waist-deep snow. When I woke up, the blackness had been replaced by what looked like gray haze. For a second, I thought there was a fire, but the ice-cold temperature meant that wasn't very likely. The haze was luminous, drifting back and forth above me like a cloud. The initial flash of panic passed right away, and I felt totally at peace. The cold was unpleasant, sure, but it felt like a necessity rather than anything sinister, like the haze needed to draw the heat out of the air in order to be there. When I see things from the other side, I get a fuzzy feeling at the top of my head, like someone is gently tickling my hair, and that's how I felt in the moment. The part of the haze directly in front of my eyes began to gradually shift, slowly rearranging itself into something that resembled a face. Not a human face exactly, but not an animal either. It was sharp and fierce, but not unkind, and it radiated calm. If there is such a thing as an angel, I believe that's what I was looking at that night. The face in the haze seemed to be examining me, but what it was trying to learn, I'll never understand. I can't say how long this went on for, only that in time the haze seemed satisfied and its face dissipated, becoming formless again. Completely relaxed in a way I'd never experienced before or since, I fell back asleep and dreamed of an endless grassy plain full of people who felt familiar but whose faces were just a little out of focus. When Mr. Webster woke us up just after 8 a.m. by knocking on our door, I felt like I'd come back from a long ways away. That's the story, really. I don't have any answers or grand conclusions. It's just one of the many strange experiences that have made up my life.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.